Hi everybody. Today I'm here to give to you a kind of a very simple example on how to use the responsive web design technique, the RWD. So this is the page that I will be working with. As you can see, this page is centralized, okay, over the width of the viewport or the width of the browser. And it has in reality two columns, okay? So a long time ago, people would use a table to lay out the content of those pages, but we know that using table is not a good idea, especially in regards to search engine optimization, SEO. Okay, so here I'm going to show to you how is the HTML and the CSS code for this simple page here. So here is the HTML code. So I have here the head part with the title, meta name, description, the link to the CSS that I have, okay? And here the header, the main part of the content that contains a navigation element, contains a section with the chunk of the content, and then a footer, okay? Now, of course, I don't expect that the website, when I'm going to maintain and I'm going to apply the responsive web design technique, that the website would be written using semantic tags and anything like that. I would probably expect this website to be written using divs, okay? A lot of divs. I would recommend to change those to semantic tags to make the website more accessible. You are already maintaining, changing, applying the responsive web design technique. So take advantage of that time and enhance the HTML code. Of course, if you do that, you would have to go to the CSS to change accordingly, okay? So here is the CSS. So this is a simple reset, okay? So the body has a background color light blue. That's why you see that light blue here. And the color of the font is navy. That's why you see all the font color for the whole content, menu, and everything being navy. Now, of course, this here was changed, okay, to be according to the semantic tags, because if there were divs, they would probably have IDs, and these would probably be a pound sign with the name of the ID, with the value of the ID. So here you have the minimum width of this header, footer, and the main. Remember that the main tag, it is made of the navigation plus the chunk of the content, the section, okay? So all of them, they have a minimum width of 700 pixels. The width, the original width, if it fits in the browser, it's going to be 860 pixels. Margin auto, that's what is making this width here be centralized, okay, within the browser width. And it has a border, okay, of 1 pixel only, solid red. Now, if you would use Chrome Developer Tools, you're going to see that the width, the complete width, for example, of the header is not only 860 pixels. Let's see why. Okay, so I'm going to open the Chrome Developer Tools here, because this is an important concept, especially when you're going to apply the RWD technique. So let me select the header here, and you're going to see, look over there on the left, it says that the header, it's 882, not 860. 860 as I was expecting. And why is that? When the browser sets up the whole width, it will take the width that you put for the element, which was 860, but it will also add border, okay? It will also add margin that you probably put. It will also add padding. So remember, I have a border of 1 pixel on each side. Just look at the width, so just look at the sides, okay? So the border on the left and the border on the right. Don't look, I don't care about the border on the top and the border at the bottom, okay? Because this will make the height. But the width of the element, the total real width on the browser, okay, is giving to me 882 pixels, not 860, because if you add 1 pixel of the border to the right, 1 pixel, you have 2 pixels, so 862. But you also have here padding 10 pixels. That means I'm adding 10 pixels to the right, 10 pixels to the left, 20 pixels. So there you go, the 882 pixels you see, okay? The footer would be the same thing, and the main would be the same thing because the main also has the padding and has the border, okay? So all the width is made of the whole entire, the real width of the element is going to count the width you gave in the CSS plus any padding you gave, any border you gave, and any margin. In that case here, the margin is auto, so it's not gonna count towards the width, okay? But if you look here at the body, okay, you see here why I have this scrolling here. If you look at the header, if you look at the main, 882, if you look at the footer, 882, all of them with the same width, okay? This is important because then when you go to apply the RWD, you do not want the user scrolling sideways on mobile devices. So you need to make sure that the padding, if you want to put some padding so that the content is not going to be too tight to the border of the mobile device, then you need to use something else to make sure you are not going to add that padding to the real width and then having that little scroll, okay, to the side. Okay, so now let me show to you how you approach when you do the responsive web design. So you have here the original CSS file. When you start the responsive web design, what you have to think about is, what are going to be the CSS properties that I can leave at the top of my CSS, meaning those properties can be safely applied no matter if the user is opening the page on a desktop, laptop, or in a mobile device. That's how you start. Then, based on the original CSS, any property that you see that, oh, that property definitely cannot be applied in a mobile device, then you are going to put inside the add media query that corresponds to desktop, laptop, or bigger device, wider devices, okay? So just to give you an example and then show to you how the RWD would be done for this scenario. Look here, this is the at media for the desktop, laptop, or bigger device. Why? Because it's an at media screen and the minimum width of the device is 601 pixels. So look that inside here, all that line, header, footer, main, that had the minimum width of 700 pixels, the width of 860 pixels, had the border and the margin auto. There was a line like that, right? All that line, I realized that, oh no, this line here can definitely not be applied to mobile devices. So I put it inside the at media screen for desktop laptops, for bigger devices, to maintain for the user, because the user requested to maintain the original layout when it's desktop or laptop or a smart TV. They asked me to maintain that, so that's what I did. Now, I do the same thing with the other parts, okay? So I have a header, footer, main with the padding of 10 pixels. That padding of 10 pixels, I cannot immediately put in my mobile device because it will be added to the width, okay? And I need, I don't want to have the side scrolling, correct? Same thing, I cannot have a float left. I don't want two columns. My mobile device, when you present a website, preferably it should be one single column. And preferably you should have the heading at the top. Then if there is a menu. If you have the chunk content should come next. And the footer should come right at below. Now imagine that instead, if you had instead of two columns, you would have a third column here with links, okay? You are not going to put the extra links or extra resource before the content, right? In a one column, because you don't want the user to be scrolling up until it finds the chunk of your page, the main content, right? So then you would put that third column below the content, before the footer, of course, but below the content. Do you see where I'm going with this? You have to think about that layout, okay? So then here, all that float will go only for desktop, laptop. The same thing with the section with that margin left. That's why the section is starting here, because it has a huge margin left, okay? And then you have the section UL with a padding. That's why that section UL is starting here, because remember that at the top, I reset every margin, everything. That means that the UL, normally it comes with a padding. The browsers apply padding to every list. But because I reset, that UL here was starting a little bit to the left of the section. I don't want that. I want it to start indented and start inside the section. Okay, so that's why that padding, and that padding was maintained. That padding was part of the original CSS. Look at this. The section UL had a padding here. Now, the figure and the fig caption to be aligned to the center, it's fine. Even in a mobile device, it's fine. The thing is, look at this here. Now let's see the mobile, okay? Now, header, footer, the main, nav, section, they will all have width 100% because they will all take the whole width. I will have only one column, right? So all the elements, they will make the whole width of the browser. Now, if I put the whole width like that and I don't put any padding, okay, the navigation, especially the content, the main content, will be too tight to the borders of the device, okay? Might make it a little bit hard to read, okay, or not very pleasant. So that's why you see the padding. But because I put padding, I need to use for those elements this box sizing, border box. What does it mean in CSS? If you make a research, you're going to see that that CSS property will tell the browser, look, whenever you have a width set, please do not add padding and border to that width. They are part of the width. They are not outside, they are not extra to the width. So I don't want to create a width that it's more than 100% because otherwise the user will have the side scrolling. Okay, that's why you use the box sizing border box. Now, look what I did to the items of the navigation. I didn't have anything here in the UL, okay, talking about each specific li element, okay? The li is being formatted the way that the browser likes to format, with the CSS directly from the browser. But for mobile devices, each link like that is gonna be touched by the user with the finger. So I wanted, when I applied the RWD, to not only put each li taking 100%, so each li will be in one single line as it normally is, because LIs, they are presented one line at a time, okay? But I wanted to align to the center, okay? So the menu, the text of the menu is going to be centralized. Besides that, I wanted to give a bigger line height and a bigger height. Note that the height and the line height, they are the same value. That means that the text is going to be centralized, not only because of the text aligned center. They are not going to be only centralized within the width of the browser, but they will also be centralized according to the height of the element, within the height of the element, because I put both line height and height to be the same. That's a nice trick to centralize the content related to the height of the element, to the middle of the element, okay? So that's what I did. So I put first the @media for the mobile device with a max width of 600 pixels. So whatever device has 600 pixels or less of width of the viewport, this is going to apply, and of course, this at the top is going to apply to. Whatever I left at the top, that can be applied to both. If the user uses a device that is 601 pixels or bigger, okay? So the minimum width of the device is 601, look, just one more than the maximum width. Then I'm going to say that I'm using a wider device, like a desktop, for example. So I'm going to apply this CSS together with the CSS at the top that I left. Okay? So then, based on that, I need to go and change, because I changed the name of the CSS, okay? Just to maintain the two CSS so you guys would have an idea. So I'm going to comment that CSS right now, okay? And I'm going to uncomment the CSS that you had below. That is exactly the original RWD CSS. So I'm going to save this. When I refresh, I continue to have the original layout, okay? Because I'm using a device that is bigger than 601 pixels. Now, I'm going to open the developer tools in Chrome, and I'm going to use the mobile. I'm going to toggle the mobile, okay, device. So here, when I toggle that, I have access to different mobile devices, okay? I'm going to leave with the iPhone SE. But look here, I did everything in the original CSS. I applied the RWD technique. Why my page continues to show like I did not apply any responsive web design technique? Well, because simply the browser is not recognizing that width that you used in the add media query, because you did not put the meta viewport. I need that meta viewport to tell the browser, look, whenever you see width in the CSS, make sure that it's related to not the CSS at the media query inside the CSS. It's related to device width. The initial scale is because I don't want my page to be shown zoomed in or zoomed out. I want to show with the scale, the normal, the default scale of the browser, okay? I never use the max scale, okay? Because the max scale, if you use like max scale 1, what you are saying is you are forbidding the user to zoom your page. It's not a good idea, because sometimes the user wants to zoom. The user might be, for example, in a car that might be difficult to read, or might be looking at your web page on the street and it might be dark, so they want to zoom to read it better, to make it easier to read. Okay, so always, if you set the meta viewport the way that it's showing here, it will be fine. So let me save. And now I will refresh, and there you go. Now my CSS is being applied. If you look, for example, at the main, like even at the section, you're going to see that the CSS that is being applied is the maximum width of 600 pixels. That's the CSS that is being applied. And you see that here, I do not have any, I have a very light scrolling, but does not bother the reading, okay? Now, another detail that I want to call the attention to you is that in regard to the font size of the fig caption, I changed it to be in an accessible unit, not pixels, not point. I changed it to be in REM, okay, or EM or percentage, but don't use, please don't use points or pixels, because depending on the resolution of the mobile device, and those iPhones, those modern iPhones, for example, the modern Samsung device, they have very high resolutions. So don't make the user not be able to read an information, okay? Because the pixel might be so tiny that the user is not going to be able to read, okay, in comparison to a desktop. So put always a relative unit, okay, that we respect the choices of the user as well. So this is whatever, not only for the figure, okay, for the figure caption. You're going to see in the lecture that depending on the image that you present on the desktop, there are ways and there are resources that you can use, even online, to resize the images, make them smaller in width and height, to be able to present in mobile device in a better way. Not only putting here, for example, like if I put here figure with 100%, look what's going to happen with that image. Okay, I might have an image that will kind of stretch, okay? It will stretch all look, all over here. So the figure is stretched here. So if my image, the image that I'm downloading, if it was a bigger, a wider image than that, that image is pretty small. If you look on the desktop version, the image is pretty small by itself, okay? So as you can see, I don't have a problem with that image to present in a mobile device. But suppose it was a very wide image. Don't use only the width 100%. You're going to see in the lecture ways to use the SRC set attribute in the image, or to use the picture element, okay? And then offer to the browser 1, 2, or 3 different images. So the browser will select and only download the best image for that device. You will learn that in the lecture. Here, all I wanted was to show a very simple example on how you use the RWD technique. Okay? So, hope this is helpful for you, and have a nice day.